In the 1970s, video games were very basic. Graphics consisted of simple geometric shapes. All the good games were at the arcade, and home consoles didn't offer any quality games. Most people thought that video games would be a trend that would come and go, because the games of the 70s weren't fun to play. Nobody could have guessed what video games would grow into over time. By the early 1980s, arcade games became a vibrant industry, and the amount of arcades doubled from 1980 to 1982. However, a number of factors contributed to the video game industry crashing in 1983. One reason for the crash is that there were way too many home consoles on the market. There was the Atari 2600, Atari 5200, the ColecoVision, the Coleco Gemini, and much more. The dozens of consoles flooded the market, and consumers had way too many choices. There were tons of video games being released, so much that stores barely had enough shelf space to hold all of them. Most of these were terrible, and not entertaining at all. This dip in quality led to consumers losing confidence in video games. Thus, in 1983, the video game industry crashed. It didn't recover until the Nintendo came out with their Nintendo Entertainment System console in 1985. For the rest of the 1980s, Nintendo dominated the gaming market in its entirety, like Disney dominated the animation department. This shift led to the control of the video game industry from the United States to Japan. The 1980s also saw the emergence of the first gaming mascot, Pac-Man. Released for arcades in 1980, Pac-Man was an icon of 1980s pop culture, and is consistently published up to the present day, boasting many remakes, sequels, re-releases, ports, and updated versions. Numerous Pac-Man clones were developed after Pac-Man's massive success. Pac-Man is counted as a landmark in video game history and is among the most famous arcade game in history. It is the second highest grossing arcade game of all time, collecting more than $2.5 billion in quarters by the 1990s. The tile-matching puzzle game, Tetris, came out in June 6, 1984. Tetris' massive popularity has made it available on just about every video game console and computer system, and on graphing calculators, music players, and cell phones. Tetris is the #1 best-selling video game of all time, selling 495 million copies across all platforms, and the Game Boy version is the 6th best-selling game of all time. The game has even inspired Tetris-based serving dishes and has been played on the sides of buildings. One of the more unique games of the 1980s was the light gun shooter, Duck Hunt. Duck Hunt was released in 1984 in Japan, and was brought to America in 1985. In Duck Hunt, players use a gun-shaped controller to aim and fire at the ducks appearing on screen. Its popularity led to arcade shooter games becoming prevalent in the next decade. 1985's Super Mario Bros. Is arguably the most successful video game ever. Super Mario Bros. Further popularized the already popular side-scrolling platforming genre. Its success led the development of many successors, with over 15 entries today. Mario's success also spawned the broader Mario franchise, with games such as Mario Kart, Mario Party, and multiple Mario sports games. Today the entire Mario franchise is the #1 best-selling video game franchise, with over 500 million copies sold. With the release of the Nintendo Entertainment System in the 1980s and Sony's PlayStation in the 1990s came new generations of games, with better graphics, and more capabilities. Game developers were no longer as restricted by their media, and tried to spark reality as best as possible. New innovations in technology meant more realistic violence and gore. The video game industry has grown by leaps and bounds since its kickoff in the 1970s. One of the industry's most successful company, Nintendo, sold an average of 3 games every second from 1983 to 1995. That adds up to over 1 billion games. An industry war has begun to see who can build the newest, fastest, most popular game. With new 16-bit machines, the 1990s was a new era for video games, with graphical inception beyond anything seen before. Adventure games also profited from enhanced visuals in a way no text adventure ever could. With a point-and-click such as The Secret of Monkey Island, illustrating a young man who dreams of becoming a pirate and explores fictional islands while solving puzzles. 1991's Sonic the Hedgehog was a huge success and spawned follow-ups that still exist today. The game focused Sonic's ability to run and to jump at high speeds with the use of springs, checkpoints, and loops. 1991's Street Fighter II was responsible for sending the popularity of fighting games skyward, with huge sprites, a cast of memorable characters and solid combo controls. Its massive popularity led to a wave of fighting game releases, including that of the infamous Mortal Kombat. Mortal Kombat was a fighting game that sparked much controversy due to its extreme violence and gore. Eventually the ESRB, or Entertainment Software Rating Board, was founded in response to violent video game content, requiring all video games to be rated and the rating to be put on games packaging. While not necessarily the first real-time strategy video game, 1992's Dune 2 established the format that would be followed for years to come. As such, Dune 2 is the exemplary real-time strategy game. Wolfenstein 3D was a vital and commercial success. It is widely regarded as having helped popularize the genre on the PC and having established the basic run-and-gun archetype for many subsequent first-person shooter games. Doom is considered to be one of the developing first-person shooter games, introducing to IBM-compatible computers features such as 3D graphics, third-dimension spatiality, and networked multiplayer gameplay. Since the release of Doom in 1993, the series has created numerous follow-ups, expansion packs, and a film. Sony entered the video game industry to release the PlayStation in December 1994, and a year later worldwide. The PlayStation was an immediate success. 1994's UFO, Enemy Unknown, was listed as one of the best video games ever made and was the first in the XCOM series. The game received strong reviews and was commercially successful. Chrono Trigger was another highlight of the year, a critically acclaimed RPG that ticked all the right boxes, with multiple endings and a coherent aesthetic. In 1996, Nintendo released the Nintendo 64, and it is the industry's last major home console to use the cartridge as its primary storage format. Super Mario 64 has left a lasting impression on 3D game design, particularly remarkable for its use of a dynamic camera system and the execution of its 360-degree analog control. A pocket-sized Pokémon was a huge success that inspired an animated series, films, a trading card game, and has resulted in a long-term series of video game issues. The gothic brown hues of Quake saw it further push the boundaries of the FPS, with a fully modeled world and early support for 3D acceleration. 1997's GoldenEye 007 was highly acclaimed by the gaming media and has sold over 8 million copies worldwide, making it the third best-selling Nintendo 64 game. Grand Theft Auto, a top-down open-world game in which larceny and murder are common currency. StarCraft, released for Windows on 1998, is the first video game in the StarCraft series. A science fiction real-time strategy game, StarCraft is set in a distant sector of the Milky Way galaxy. The Legend of Zelda entered the third dimension with Ocarina of Time for the Nintendo 64, universally loved and one of the highest-rated video games of all time. By this point, 3D graphics were starting to mature, and so fast-paced polygonal action didn't need to balance on graphical accuracy. A new generation of consoles released with the turn of the millennium. The new technology allowed for games to be produced with even better graphics, online capabilities, and higher production values. Online gaming achieved mainstream popularity with the release of the Xbox-exclusive Halo Combat Evolved in 2001. Halo is one of the reasons the Xbox was able to become a popular gaming console. The release of Halo also brought the first-person shooter genre into the foreground of mainstream gaming. The emergence of the open-world sandbox genre into massive popularity was caused by the release of Grand Theft Auto 3 in 2001. It became the best-selling game in the United States in 2001, selling over 2 million copies by 2002. However, Grand Theft Auto 3's release strengthened the idea that video games cause violence. The violent nature of the game sparked a lot of controversy, being able to go around and kill police and innocent people by the dozens, robbing people of their money and cars, and other mature subject matters. The mature content caused parent groups and even lawmakers to start a campaign to ban the game from stores. The advances made in technology also made the presentation of storytelling in video games more cinematic. Released in 2001, and considered one of the greatest horror games ever made, Silent Hill 2 handled dark subject matters such as domestic abuse and incest. This psychological horror game terrified players not by putting you in hallways full of decaying monsters, but by showing the horrors deep in the hearts of men. Metal Gear Solid 2 was also a game which took video game storytelling to new heights. The game received universal acclaim for its stealth gameplay, tight direction, great voice acting, and excellent cinematography. But underneath is a plot that explores themes such as social engineering, sociology, artificial intelligence, information control, censorship, free will, conspiracy theories, and child exploitation. Whether the plot is too heavy or not, Metal Gear Solid 2 is often shown as an example of artistic expression in video games, and has sold over 7 million copies since its release in 2001. This leap in technology allowed for a twist in the role-playing game genre. And none were more captivating than 2002's Kingdom Hearts. While its enthralling gameplay was enough to give it merit, playing a game that featured a cast of Disney characters was the hook that had people invested. Its colorful art style, excellent musical score, and mix of beloved characters helped sell a new genre going into the next millennium. 2005's MapleStory is a two-dimensional, side-scrolling, massively multiplayer online role-playing game. The game takes place mainly in the Maple world, where players must fight against monsters while completing quests. The history of Maple World is rich and storied, and stretches back for millennia. Released in 2007, Call of Duty 4's accessible and highly customizable multiplayer experience hooked players around the globe. Selling 7 million copies by January 2008, Call of Duty 4's overwhelming success propelled gaming into massive mainstream popularity and is a massive part of what gaming is today. A new Call of Duty is released every year, and every time to blockbuster-level sales, selling millions of copies with each release. The Call of Duty franchise is now the 5th best-selling video game series of all time, with over 250 million copies sold. No single game is more of a testament to how gaming has changed from a niche pastime into a respected form of entertainment than Grand Theft Auto 5. Widely anticipated, releasing in 2013, it broke sales records and became the fastest-selling entertainment product in history, selling 11 million copies in its first 24 hours of release. Praised for its expansive open world, sharp graphics, and grand presentation, it has received multiple awards from gaming publications, receiving over 100 nominations for titles such as Most Anticipated Game of 2013, Best Game of 2013, and Best Multi-Platform Game, among a plethora of others. It is the 4th best-selling game of all time, with over 65 million copies sold.